Abuse doesn't always begin with bruises or shouting. Often it begins quietly, through confusion, fear, emotional neglect, or the slow erosion of safety. For many people, childhood abuse becomes the invisible blueprint for adulthood. When the nervous system learns early that love comes with pain, unpredictability, or silence, it doesn't forget, it adapts. The child learns to stay alert, to minimize themselves, to read moods like survival skills. And later in life, those same survival patterns don't disappear. They disguise themselves as chemistry, loyalty, or just how relationships are. This is why so many people move from abusive childhood homes into abusive teenage relationships and then into abusive adult dynamics, wondering why the same story keeps repeating with different faces. One of the most misunderstood truths about abuse is this: people don't gravitate toward abuse because they like pain. They gravitate toward what feels familiar. Familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts. If chaos, criticism, or emotional withdrawal were normal growing up, calm can feel suspicious and uncomfortable. The body confuses intensity with connection. The nervous system, trained in survival mode, seeks what it knows how to navigate. This is why abusive relationships often feel magnetic at first, because they activate old wiring. And without awareness, people unconsciously recreate environments that match their earliest emotional training, even when those environments slowly drain them. Abuse doesn't stop at romantic relationships. Many people unknowingly walk into abusive work environments, jobs where boundaries are violated, voices are silenced, credit is stolen, or fear is used as motivation. These environments often feel normal to those who grew up having to tolerate mistreatment to survive. The inner voice says, just push through, don't make trouble, this is how authority works. What's actually happening is a replay of early power imbalances. The body freezes instead of fighting back, not because the person is weak, but because freezing once kept them safe. Understanding this is crucial, because healing isn't about blaming yourself for staying, it's about recognizing why leaving felt impossible. Recovery from abuse does not begin with forgiveness or positivity. It begins with truth. Naming what happened without minimizing it, excusing it, or comparing it to someone else's pain is a radical act of self-respect. Abuse thrives in silence and confusion. Healing begins when the mind stops asking, was it really that bad? And starts saying, it affected me, and that matters. Validation rewires shame. When you stop gaslighting your own experience, your nervous system finally receives the message that the danger is being acknowledged, and that acknowledgement alone can begin to release years of stored tension, hypervigilance, and self-doubt. Another critical step in recovery is understanding that your reactions were intelligent responses to unsafe conditions. People often carry deep shame for how they coped. People-pleasing, dissociation, emotional numbing, staying too long, going back after leaving. But these were not character flaws. They were survival strategies. The body did what it needed to do to get through something overwhelming. Healing happens faster when self-judgment is replaced with curiosity. When you ask, what was this protecting me from? Instead of, what's wrong with me? You begin to separate who you are from what you endured. As healing deepens, something uncomfortable often emerges: grief. Grief for the childhood you didn't get. Grief for the relationships that shaped you through harm instead of safety. Grief for the version of yourself that adapted instead of thrived. This grief can feel heavy, confusing, even destabilizing, but it is a sign of progress. It means your nervous system is no longer locked in survival mode. It finally believes there is room to feel. Many people try to bypass this stage, but unprocessed grief keeps the past alive in the body. Allowing yourself to mourn is not weakness. It is closure without needing an apology. Moving forward from abuse does not mean becoming invulnerable. It means becoming attuned. You begin to recognize red flags earlier, not because you're paranoid, but because your body is no longer dissociated from its signals. You learn that calm is not boring, that respect is not conditional, and that consistency is not something you have to earn. Boundaries start to feel less like walls and more like self-trust in action. And slowly, without force, the patterns that once controlled your life begin to loosen. Not because you fought them, but because you finally understood them. As recovery progresses, many survivors encounter a quiet but unsettling phase where the old identity begins to dissolve. The version of you that survived abuse, hyper-aware, accommodating, self-silencing, may no longer fit, but a new sense of self hasn't fully formed yet. This in-between state can feel empty, lonely, or frightening. People often mistake this discomfort as regression, when in reality it's a sign of growth. You are no longer living purely in reaction, but you haven't yet learned how to exist without armor. This is where patience becomes essential, because rebuilding an identity after abuse is not about reinventing yourself overnight. It's about discovering who you were before survival became your personality. One of the most difficult shifts in healing is learning to tolerate safety. When the nervous system has been conditioned by threat, calm can feel wrong, silence can feel tense, healthy relationships can feel dull or unfamiliar. The mind may start searching for problems, creating doubt where none exists. This is not intuition, it's withdrawal from chaos. Many people unknowingly sabotage safe environments because their body hasn't yet learned that peace doesn't require vigilance. Healing involves retraining the nervous system to understand that stability is not a trap and that rest does not mean danger is coming. At this stage, boundaries often trigger intense guilt. Saying no can feel selfish. Advocating for yourself can feel aggressive. Walking away can feel cruel, even when it's necessary. This guilt is not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's evidence that you were once punished for having needs. Abuse conditions people to associate self-protection with loss. So when you begin honoring your limits, the body reacts as if abandonment is imminent. Learning to sit with that discomfort without abandoning yourself again is one of the most powerful acts of recovery. This is also when the inner critic tends to grow louder, the voice that says, "You're too sensitive, you're overreacting, you should be over this by now." That voice is often internalized abuse, not truth. It echoes the messages that once kept you compliant and quiet. Healing doesn't silence this voice instantly, but it does change your relationship to it. Instead of obeying it, you begin to recognize it as outdated programming, one that no longer serves your safety or growth. If this message resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in these patterns, take a moment to pause here. You're not broken. You're responding exactly how someone would after prolonged harm. And if content like this helps you make sense of your experiences, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe to PSYCHOVEST for more deep, grounded conversations about healing, self-trust, and emotional recovery. These topics deserve space, and so do you. As recovery continues, many survivors notice a shift in how they experience time. The urgency to fix everything fades, replaced by a slower, more deliberate awareness. You start noticing subtle cues, tension in the body, emotional fatigue, the difference between obligation and desire. This attunement is not weakness, it's regulation. The nervous system is learning that it doesn't have to rush to survive. This is often when people begin redefining success, not as endurance, but as alignment. Another overlooked part of healing is anger, not explosive anger, but clean, contained anger that clarifies boundaries. Many survivors were taught that anger was dangerous or unacceptable, so it turned inward as shame or depression. When anger is finally allowed, it often brings relief. It says, "That wasn't okay." Not to dwell in resentment, but to reclaim dignity. Anger, when processed safely, restores self-respect and protects against future harm. As healing deepens, many survivors begin to notice something unsettling but important: distance from people who once felt essential. This isn't coldness, and it isn't superiority. It's clarity. When your nervous system stabilizes, relationships built on control, chaos, or emotional inconsistency no longer feel tolerable. Conversations that once felt normal may now feel draining or hollow. This can trigger loneliness, because growth often creates a temporary gap between who you were bonded to in survival and who you are becoming in safety. Letting that gap exist without rushing to fill it is a sign of emotional maturity, not abandonment. Another quiet shift happens in how you interpret responsibility. Survivors of abuse often carry an exaggerated sense of accountability for other people's emotions, reactions, and outcomes. Healing gradually dismantles this burden. You begin to recognize that empathy does not require self-sacrifice, and understanding someone's pain does not obligate you to stay in it with them. This realization can feel destabilizing at first because it removes the familiar role of caretaker or fixer. But in its place comes something steadier: self-respect that does not need permission. As the nervous system recalibrates, the body often releases memories in unexpected ways. Sensations, dreams, sudden emotions, or physical discomfort can surface without a clear narrative attached. This is not regression, it's integration. Trauma is stored not just as memory, but as sensation. When the body finally senses safety, it begins to process what was once too overwhelming to feel. Allowing these experiences to pass without forcing interpretation helps the system complete cycles that were interrupted long ago. At this point, many survivors struggle with trust, not just toward others, but toward themselves. Years of being overridden, dismissed, or manipulated can fracture self-trust. Decisions feel heavy, intuition feels unreliable. Healing involves practicing small acts of self-belief, honoring preferences, listening to fatigue, choosing rest without justification. Over time, these small choices rebuild an internal alliance. You begin to experience yourself as someone who listens, protects, and responds, rather than someone who must be overridden to function. Another transformation occurs in how you experience control. Abuse often leaves people oscillating between hyper-control and helplessness. Healing introduces a third state: agency without force. You learn that you don't need to dominate outcomes to feel safe, nor surrender yourself to avoid conflict. This balanced state allows for flexibility, responding instead of reacting. It's subtle but powerful. Life stops feeling like something happening to you and starts feeling like something you participate in. As this sense of agency grows, many survivors confront an unexpected fear: freedom. When your life has been shaped by survival, choice can feel overwhelming. Without external pressure, manipulation, or crisis, the question arises: what do I actually want? This question can feel paralyzing at first because desire was once unsafe or irrelevant. But slowly, desire becomes information. It guides instead of threatens. And learning to trust it is one of the final layers of reclaiming yourself. As recovery continues, many survivors become acutely aware of how deeply abuse shaped their perception of normalcy. Situations that once felt acceptable, being talked over, subtly criticized, emotionally neglected, now register as internal discomfort. This discomfort is not oversensitivity, it is discernment. Your nervous system is no longer numb, it is signaling boundaries before harm escalates. Learning to trust this discomfort, rather than override it for the sake of harmony, is one of the most important skills developed after abuse. Another layer of healing involves redefining strength. Many survivors were praised for being resilient, independent, or strong while they were actively being harmed. Over time, this praise can feel hollow, even insulting, because it rewarded endurance rather than protection. Healing reframes strength as responsiveness instead of endurance, knowing when to pause, when to leave, when to ask for support. This shift often feels uncomfortable because it challenges the identity built around surviving without help. But true strength includes the ability to receive care without shame. As self-awareness grows, patterns of self-abandonment become clearer. Survivors often notice how frequently they override their own needs to maintain peace, approval, or stability. Healing does not demand perfection. It invites noticing. Each moment of awareness creates choice. Instead of automatically saying yes, you pause. Instead of dismissing discomfort, you investigate it. Over time, these pauses accumulate, and self-abandonment loses its grip, not through force, but through understanding. Another unexpected change appears in how you relate to conflict. Abuse teaches that conflict equals danger. So many survivors either avoid it entirely or experience it as overwhelming. Healing introduces nuance. Disagreement no longer feels like an existential threat. You learn that tension can exist without collapse, and that expressing yourself does not automatically lead to punishment or loss. This realization allows relationships to deepen, because honesty becomes possible where silence once dominated. Many survivors also experience a shift in how they interpret love. What once felt intense, consuming, or unpredictable may begin to feel destabilizing rather than exciting. In its place, steadiness starts to matter more than sparks. Reliability begins to feel romantic. Emotional availability feels grounding. This change can feel disorienting, especially in cultures that equate love with intensity. But this is not settling. It is your nervous system recognizing safety as connection. As safety becomes internalized, the need to explain yourself diminishes. Survivors often over-explain as a way to prevent misunderstanding or conflict. Healing teaches that you do not need to justify your boundaries, feelings, or decisions to be valid. Silence becomes a form of confidence rather than fear. You begin to let your actions speak, trusting that those who respect you will not require constant explanation. There is also a growing awareness of time, not as something to race against, but as something to inhabit. Abuse often creates urgency. Fix this, prove that, endure until something changes. Healing slows that urgency. You begin to experience life as less of a test and more of a process. This shift doesn't eliminate pain, but it changes your relationship to it. Pain becomes something you move through, not something that defines you. As healing settles more deeply, many survivors begin to recognize how often their lives were shaped by anticipation rather than presence. Anticipating moods, anticipating danger, anticipating rejection. Abuse trains the mind to live slightly ahead of the moment, always scanning for what might go wrong. Recovery gently pulls awareness back into the present. You notice moments where nothing is required of you. No performance, no defense, no emotional labor. At first, this presence can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, but over time, it becomes grounding. The body learns that not every moment demands readiness for impact. Another subtle transformation occurs in the relationship with self-expression. Survivors often learned to mute their voices, soften their opinions, or adjust their personalities to avoid backlash. As safety increases, expression begins to return, not all at once, but in fragments. You may notice a desire to speak more honestly, create, explore, or assert preferences without apology. This is not rebellion, it is restoration. Expression becomes a way of reclaiming territory that was once taken. As this reclamation unfolds, many survivors confront an internal conflict between loyalty to the past and responsibility to the present. There can be guilt about outgrowing family systems, social roles, or identities formed in pain. Healing asks a difficult question. Who are you allowed to become if you stop organizing your life around what hurt you? This question can bring fear, because growth sometimes feels like betrayal. But evolving does not erase the past. It honors it by refusing to repeat it. Another important shift happens in how survivors relate to vulnerability. For a long time, vulnerability meant exposure without protection. It meant being seen and harmed. Healing redefines vulnerability as choice rather than obligation. You learn that openness is not owed to everyone, and that trust is built through consistency, not promises. This discernment allows connection to deepen safely, rather than repeating cycles of overexposure followed by withdrawal. As discernment sharpens, many survivors realize they are no longer drawn to intensity as proof of meaning. Emotional highs and lows lose their grip. What begins to matter is how you feel after interactions, calm or depleted, grounded or anxious. This after effect becomes more important than words or gestures. The nervous system becomes a reliable compass, guiding you away from harm without requiring explanation. There is also a growing capacity to tolerate uncertainty. Abuse often creates a need for certainty as a way to feel safe. Healing introduces flexibility. You learn that not knowing does not equal danger, and that waiting does not mean abandonment. This tolerance allows life to unfold without constant control, reducing anxiety and increasing trust in your ability to respond rather than predict. As this trust builds, the internal world becomes less crowded. The constant internal dialogue, analyzing, rehearsing, justifying, begins to quiet. Silence no longer feels threatening. It feels spacious. In that space, something important emerges. Choice. Not dramatic choice, but quiet, steady choice. The kind that reshapes a life over time. As healing stabilizes, many survivors notice a shift in how they relate to their own needs. What once felt inconvenient, excessive, or dangerous now begins to feel legitimate. Hunger, exhaustion, emotional overwhelm, signals that were once ignored or suppressed, start to register as important information rather than obstacles. This is a critical turning point. Abuse teaches people to override the body in order to survive. Recovery teaches the opposite, that listening is what keeps you safe now. The body is no longer the enemy, it is the guide. With this shift comes a deeper awareness of self-respect. Not the performative kind rooted in confident slogans, but a quiet internal standard that says, "I will not stay where I am diminished." This standard doesn't require confrontation or explanation. It shows up in choices, what you tolerate, what you disengage from, what you no longer negotiate away. Survivors often underestimate how powerful this internal boundary is because it operates without drama. But over time, it radically alters the trajectory of a life. Another layer of recovery involves recognizing how abuse distorted your sense of responsibility for other people's healing. Many survivors were placed in emotional roles they were never meant to hold: caretaker, mediator, emotional regulator. Healing dismantles this role slowly and often uncomfortably. You begin to notice when you're stepping in to manage someone else's emotions, prevent their discomfort, or absorb their chaos. And instead of reacting automatically, you pause. That pause is freedom. It returns energy back to where it belongs, your own life. As this energy returns, there is often a surge of creativity, curiosity, or desire for expansion. Survivors may feel drawn to learning, building, creating, or exploring new paths that once felt impossible. This isn't escapism, it's reclamation. When survival is no longer consuming every resource, life force naturally looks for expression. Following these impulses gently, without pressure to monetize or perfect them, strengthens the sense that life is no longer something to endure, but something to participate in. If this resonates, if you're recognizing pieces of your own journey in these words, pause here for a moment. This work is deep, and it matters. If you want more content that explores healing, self-trust, and psychological recovery at this level, Like this video, share it with someone who may be quietly carrying similar wounds, and subscribe to PSYCHOVEST. These conversations are for those who are ready to move forward without denying what they've been through. As awareness deepens, many survivors begin to feel less reactive to external validation. Praise loses its grip. Criticism loses its power, not because you've become numb, but because your sense of worth is no longer externally negotiated. Abuse conditions people to measure themselves through others' approval. Healing internalizes worth. You begin to evaluate experiences based on alignment rather than acceptance, asking not, do they like me, but do I feel like myself here? Another quiet but profound change occurs in how survivors experience rest. Rest once felt unsafe, like vulnerability, laziness, or loss of control. Healing reframes rest as regulation. The nervous system learns that slowing down does not invite danger. This allows true recovery to happen, not just mentally, but physically. Muscles soften, breathing deepens, sleep improves. These are not small victories. They are signs that the body is finally exiting survival mode. As recovery matures, many survivors begin to notice how their sense of time changes. Abuse often fractures time. Memories feel frozen, the present feels rushed, and the future feels uncertain. Healing slowly restitches these pieces together. The past becomes something that happened rather than something that is happening. The present gains weight and texture. The future no longer feels like a threat, but a space of possibility. This shift doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from integration, where experiences are placed where they belong, instead of bleeding into every moment. Another important transformation occurs in how survivors relate to authority and power. Those who were harmed by caregivers, partners, or supervisors often carry a heightened sensitivity to dominance, control, or hierarchy. Healing allows discernment to replace fear. You begin to differentiate between leadership and intimidation, guidance and control. This distinction restores autonomy. Instead of automatically submitting or resisting, you choose how to engage. Power dynamics no longer dictate your sense of worth. As autonomy strengthens, many survivors confront an unexpected feeling: boredom. When chaos recedes, the nervous system no longer runs on adrenaline. Life can feel quieter, slower, even dull at times. This is not emptiness, it is regulation. The body is recalibrating after years of overstimulation. Learning to tolerate this neutrality without seeking drama is a key stage of healing. From this neutral ground, genuine interest and joy begin to emerge organically rather than through intensity. There is also a noticeable shift in how survivors relate to mistakes. In abusive environments, mistakes often carried disproportionate consequences: shame, punishment, withdrawal. Healing introduces proportionality. Errors become information rather than evidence of unworthiness. This allows experimentation without self-attack. You try, adjust, learn. Over time, this fosters confidence rooted in resilience rather than perfection. As self-trust deepens, the impulse to rescue others weakens. Survivors often feel compelled to help, fix, or save because worth was once tied to usefulness. Healing untangles this bond. You begin to recognize that compassion does not require self-sacrifice and that people are responsible for their own growth. This clarity preserves empathy while protecting energy, allowing relationships to exist without imbalance. Another layer of recovery involves reclaiming anger in its cleanest form. Not rage, not resentment, but boundary-setting anger that says, I will not allow this. This anger is calm and firm. It doesn't seek revenge. It seeks safety. Many survivors discover that this emotion, once feared, becomes one of their most reliable allies in protecting well-being. As these shifts accumulate, the internal world grows quieter, not empty, but stable. Thoughts become less intrusive. Emotions feel more contained. You begin to trust that discomfort will pass. that conflict can be survived, and that safety can be created from the inside out. This stability does not make you immune to pain, but it changes your relationship to it. Pain becomes an experience, not an identity. As healing progresses, many survivors begin to recognize how deeply abuse disrupted their sense of safety in ordinary moments. Simple experiences, relaxing, being seen, enjoying success, may have once triggered anxiety rather than pleasure. This happens because the nervous system learned that visibility or comfort often preceded harm. Recovery gently separates safety from danger. Over time, moments of ease no longer signal impending loss. Enjoyment becomes something that can be experienced without bracing for impact. Another subtle but profound shift occurs in how survivors relate to their own emotions. In abusive environments, emotions were often ignored, punished, or manipulated, teaching people to distrust their inner world. Healing restores emotional literacy. Feelings become signals rather than threats. Sadness invites rest. Anger clarifies boundaries. Fear highlights areas needing care. Instead of suppressing or amplifying emotions, you begin to listen to them, allowing them to move through without defining you. As this emotional trust grows, many survivors notice a change in how they relate to intimacy. Emotional closeness no longer feels like exposure without protection. You learn that intimacy can exist with pacing, consent, and mutual respect. This allows connection to deepen without losing yourself. The fear of being consumed or erased lessens as self-definition strengthens. Another important layer of recovery involves confronting internalized narratives about worth. Abuse often plants beliefs like, "I am difficult, I ask for too much," or "I must earn love." Healing challenges these narratives not through affirmations, but through lived experience. Each time you express a need and are met with respect, each time you leave a situation that diminishes you, the old story weakens. Worth becomes something felt rather than argued. As boundaries solidify, survivors often notice their tolerance for performative relationships fading. Surface-level interactions, emotional games, or inconsistent behavior lose appeal. You become less interested in convincing and more interested in consistency. This discernment simplifies life. Fewer relationships, but deeper ones. Less noise, more clarity. There is also a growing capacity to self-soothe without dissociation. Where once numbness or distraction provided relief, regulation now comes through presence. Breathing, grounding, movement, stillness. These practices are not techniques to fix yourself. They are ways of communicating safety to the body. Over time, the need to escape decreases as the ability to stay increases. As these changes integrate, identity continues to shift. You are no longer defined primarily by what you survived. The trauma becomes one chapter, not the entire narrative. Interests, values, and desires that were once overshadowed by survival emerge more clearly. Life begins to feel authored rather than endured. As recovery deepens, many survivors begin to notice how their relationship with silence changes. Silence once felt dangerous, an opening where criticism, neglect, or harm could appear without warning. In healing, silence gradually becomes neutral, then restful. It stops feeling like abandonment and starts feeling like space. In that space, thoughts slow down, the body settles, and you no longer feel compelled to fill every moment with explanation or effort. Silence becomes something you can inhabit without fear. Another important shift occurs in how survivors relate to hope. After prolonged abuse, hope can feel naive or even threatening, because hope once led to disappointment. Healing reframes hope as grounded rather than idealistic. It no longer depends on other people changing. It rests on your ability to respond, adapt, and protect yourself. This form of hope is quiet but durable. It doesn't promise that nothing bad will happen. It trusts that you will not abandon yourself if it does. As this trust grows, survivors often experience a change in how they relate to their past selves. Instead of resentment or embarrassment toward who they were during abusive periods, compassion begins to replace judgment. You start to see how limited your options were, how much you carried without support, how intelligently you adapted. This compassion doesn't romanticize the pain, it contextualizes it, and in doing so, it releases the grip of shame that kept the past emotionally alive. There is also a shift in how survivors experience agency during moments of stress. Where stress once triggered automatic survival responses, freezing, appeasing, dissociating, there is now a brief window of choice. That window may be small, but it matters. It allows you to pause, orient, and decide how to respond. Over time, this pause expands, and reactions soften into responses. Life feels less like a series of emergencies and more like a series of navigable moments. As emotional regulation improves, many survivors notice their memory changing. Trauma once fragmented recall. Certain memories felt vivid and intrusive, others inaccessible. Healing reorganizes memory. Experiences take their proper place in time. Triggers lose intensity. The mind no longer needs to constantly revisit the past to protect you. This integration allows attention to return to the present without fear of forgetting something essential for survival. Another quiet transformation appears in how survivors experience self-worth during stillness. When productivity or usefulness is no longer the measure of value, worth becomes intrinsic. You begin to feel deserving of care simply because you exist. This realization can feel subtle, even unsettling at first, because it contradicts years of conditioning. But it lays the foundation for a life that is no longer transactional. As these layers integrate, resilience takes on a new meaning. It no longer means enduring hardship without complaint. It means responding with flexibility, resting when needed, and choosing environments that support rather than deplete you. This form of resilience is sustainable. It does not burn you out to prove strength. It preserves you. Recovery from abuse is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to yourself without fear. It is the slow, deliberate process of teaching your nervous system that the danger has passed, that your voice matters, and that your life no longer has to be organized around survival. What once controlled you begins to loosen, not because you forced it to, but because you finally understood it. The past stops chasing you when you stop running from it. And healing becomes less about fixing what was broken and more about reclaiming what was always yours. Choice, agency, dignity, and peace. Moving forward does not mean the pain disappears completely. It means the pain no longer decides who you become. It means you trust yourself enough to leave what harms you, to stay where you are respected, and to rest without guilt. Abuse may have shaped parts of your story, but it does not get to write the ending. You do. And every moment you choose self-respect over familiarity, clarity over chaos, and safety over endurance, you are rewriting your future in real time. If this message resonated with you, if you felt seen, understood, or grounded by these words, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may be silently healing, and subscribe to PSYCHOVEST. This channel exists for those ready to move forward without denying what they've been through. You're not alone in this work, and you never have to be.